On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, Andrew Schlect joins the show to preview the Thunder season.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I am your host, media member, and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. On today's show, brought to you by our good friends over at Game Time. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed at Game Time using code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. We're joined by Andrew Schlect at Andrew K. Schlect on Twitter, the Athletic Down to Dunk podcast. You know him very well to preview this Thunder season. Andrew, how exciting is this Thunder season? You've covered a lot of years. What is the anticipation level like for you?
Yeah, this is we have not experienced anything like this in a long time. Like this is it's been a decade, because I don't even know, like, people would be like, oh, it's probably like the 15-16 season, or even like the first like Paul George Melo year. Like, things were exciting we have to remember, at the time, I don't think anybody thought they would actually win the NBA title that year because the Golden State Warriors existed. So I think it's been about a decade that since we've had these actual feelings where it's like, hey, I'll talk to my son is 12 years old and he loves the Thunder now. And so he just wants to talk about it all the time. And so he's like, Dad, like, we could actually win the championship. Like, we could actually win the whole thing. And I can't sit here and say no. I think back in like the Paul George Melo year, I'm like, let's hit the brakes a little bit on that. But no, it's actually possible.
Yeah, it's hard to pump the brakes anymore on this Thunder team. And the first thing that we're going to talk about today, Andrew, is the starting lineup. What's going to be the combination that works. Now, I'll ask it this way. What do you think will be the lineup that starts the most games for the Thunder in the regular season?
I think we've been mostly aligned on this one for a while. And that I think it's essentially just Caruso in for Giddey. And like, that's your five. And we only saw that starting lineup once in the preseason. I felt like we got a little bit trolled. We shouldn't have even talked about starting lineups ever and just see what happened, because I do feel a little bit trolled from what happened in the preseason. But I will say that I do think that it's going to be Alex Caruso in the starting lineup. I think that it makes the most sense. I think that it kind of flows with what they did last year, because like what they did last year really worked. And if you can put in a player that is a positive on defense, can shoot it from three, and can still move the ball, like, why wouldn't you do that? I mean, they put Isaiah Joe in the starting lineup in the playoffs whenever they decided to go away from Giddey or to bring Giddey off the bench. And so I think that Caruso is just a better fit there. Now, we saw Cason Wallace there. Could it be Cason Wallace? Is it so crazy to think it'd be Cason Wallace? Like, I don't think that's crazy, but I do think if you're trying to maximize the starting lineup, I would go with Alex Caruso.
Yeah, I totally agree that is what maximizes things. And I think that even whenever Hartenstein comes back in 5 to 6 weeks, it's just so much easier to blend in a double big lineup from the bench versus starting that way and then having to figure out, when you're going to stagger them off the floor, how you're going to have a constant big on the floor for the whole game. So I just think that everything gets easier and it looks smoother. There's only been 2 games where they've all played, but it looks smoother when Caruso was the one starting versus whenever they started Hartenstein in the preseason. But another like in-season, regular season question before we get to the off-season and big picture stuff. How many All-Stars will you be watching at Chase Center for the Thunder this season? How many?
Ooh, I think it's 2. I think it's really tough to get 3. I think this team would have to look historically great to get 3, which I wouldn't say that's like totally off the table. I think that there's a possibility for that, but I would go with 2. And if I'm picking 2 today, Rylan Stiles, picking Shai, very obviously, and then I'm picking J-Dub to be the second All-Star, just because I think Dub is coming into year 3, coming into his 3rd year of playing. Obviously, Chet is also coming into year 3, but this is year 2 of playing. And I just think the 3-point shooting is going to matter. I think that he is going to show himself to be one of the better 3-point shooters in the NBA, period. And I think if you increase that volume, that he's going to just inevitably score 23 to 25 points per game.
And it's a little bit more awkward to get a big into the All-Star game because you're going to have spots taken up by like Anthony Davis and them, and you're not going to take that many bigs. I think that Wemby will make it too, so you have a couple spots already gone there. My bold prediction, Andrew, is that all three are going to make it after it's all said and done. They're probably not all three going to make it on the initial go.
Okay. Keep going. That's fine. We can talk
on the injury replacement. By the time that the dust settles, all three, Shai, J-Dub, and Chet, will be there.
Okay. So you think that as like Anthony Davis sits out because of an injury, LeBron James decides that he's not playing in Chase Center, all these other things that happen. I'm joking about the LeBron thing, but I think that it is certainly possible that we get to the point where if the Thunder are 5 or 6 games ahead of the number 2 team in the West, and that all these guys are averaging over 20 points per game, then it's totally possible that we get to the end of, or we get to the All-Star game and those 3 are there. But it would have to be one of those, like, there's multiple injuries in the Western Conference kind of thing to get all 3. So
we'll see if that actually comes true or not. But coming up, Andrew Schlect gets put on the hot seat. How many games are the Thunder going to win? Are they going to win the NBA championship? What's the official you can't come back from prediction? All coming up. But first, I want to say right now about our good friends over at FanDuel. Go check out FanDuel today because the NFL season is in full swing, but you can start the NBA season with a big return at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So whether you're in the middle of a game and want to hop on there and bet on a game, or you want to do some planning, go for the spreads, player props, over-unders, you can do it all at FanDuel. And when you go right now, you'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, win or lose, when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com, where the Thunder are 2-point underdogs in Denver for opening night. So they've came down a little bit, actually, even though they've had Hartenstein get hurt. You can go bet on them at FanDuel.com and check it out today for your $200 in bonus bets guaranteed.
Get your bets in.
Get your bets in, Andrew. Hopefully that you take that and use it to go bet Thunder Nuggets on Thursday. And that's when the season does begin, Andrew. You can find Andrew on Twitter at Andrew K. Schlect, Down to Dunk podcast, Thunder After Dark podcast, The Athletic, NBA show, just everywhere in the world, Andrew is. You should have your own game. Where in the world is Andrew K. Schlect? But Andrew, how many all-defensive players will be on this Thunder team, and who on this Thunder team is the best defender on the squad?
This is a great question. We have a lot of choices in this kind of question. I think that they'll have 2 all defensive players on this team. I think that it will probably be Chet, and I think it will likely be Alex Caruso. I think that those are the 2 best defenders on the team. They're both very different defenders. I would say that Caruso is just a more refined perimeter defender. I think Dort is extremely good. I think Cason Wallace is also a very good defender. I think Isaiah Hartenstein is a very good defender as well. But I think when it comes down to it, it's probably those 2 that will make it. And we haven't seen Caruso with this team yet. However, I do think that Caruso will show himself to be the most impactful defender on the team, just because I think he can defend a lot of different kinds of players, of different kinds of wings. He's great at point of attack. He can guard guys that are 6'10" wings with no problem, honestly. And I think that he is going to show himself to be like he's already shown himself to be one of the more valuable defenders in the NBA, period. But I think that he will show himself to be the most valuable defender on the Thunder, which is a tight race, by the way. Like, this isn't like me saying that Caruso is going to be so much better than Dort. He's going to be so much better than Cason Wallace. He's going to be so much better than Chet, so much better than Isaiah Hartenstein. I think that list right there is probably, I don't know that you can say Cason Wallace is here yet, but I think that you can say the other guys on that list are in like the top 20 best defenders in the NBA.
Yeah.
And if you have that many top 20 guys on your team, like this defense is going to be scary whenever they are fully healthy. And so I do think that Caruso, though, one, he's got the experience too that some of these guys don't have. And I just think that his versatility, on ball, off ball, I think that he's just good in every spot that you put him in on the defensive end. I think Dort may still end up being the most impactful on ball defender on the team. I do think if you're playing the Mavericks, you want Lou Dort on Luka Doncic. I still think like that is a reality because he defends those guys so well. But I do think if you play the Bucks, I think you're going to want to put Caruso on Giannis. And so I do think that he's just a little bit more versatile than my guy Dort is.
Your guy Dort. I always love and can count on you to just tweet out Dort in all caps whenever he does something good
Dort,
on Twitter.
He's wonderful.
Now, of that same token, we've got a lot of discussions about Shai and J-Dub and Chet and the new signings. Is there anyone on this team who you think is going to get their game to whatever you feel the next level is this season?
To the next level.
Who's going to level up, Andrew?
Level up. Who's going to level up? Let's see. Honestly, I think that there's a lot of guys that will be better. I mean, that's the beauty of a young roster in the NBA of guys that are hardworking and are committed to the team, that it's not just one guy. I think that there will be guys that will stand out more because they're going to level up more than other guys. But I kind of expect there to be a jump from Cason Wallace and Aaron Wiggins and Isaiah Joe and even Shai and Jay Will and Dort and Chet and J-Dub. Like I expect there to be jumps from all of those guys just because they are young. And that's what happens in the NBA, is that a lot of times young guys get better, especially coming off of a playoff run where they go to the second round. I think that you learn a lot about yourself in those kind of moments. And I think you learn what you need to get better at. So I expect all those guys to get better. But the biggest jump, the biggest level up, the most levels, how are we going to say this? The most steps taken, I would say J-Dub is going to be the one that's going to stick out.
What do you think he's going to improve on?
I think that he's the thing about J-Dub, since he's been in the NBA, he's kind of been good at everything. He doesn't have like big deficiencies. I think you could say like the free throw line is one of them. I think volume of threes is another one. I think he could be a better rebounder from his position. I think those are things that he can improve on. I think he'll improve on those marginally, but I think it's going to be more so that as a scorer, he's going to continue to use that versatility. He's going to continue to up his number of threes. And then I just think as a more primary ball handler, because they're going to need him. I mean, that's one of the deficiencies with this Thunder team in general, is that they just don't have a lot of guys that can handle the load as a primary guy. It's essentially him and Shai, because then like, who else do you feel confident with to handle the load? So I do think that he's going to have more responsibilities. He's going to have a higher usage rate than he did last year. I mean, he and Giddey had the same usage rate last year. They had the exact same usage rate. And so I think like that's going to increase. And as that increases, like I think he's going to keep his efficiency for the most part and just show himself to be one of the better players in the NBA.
Well, I certainly think that J-Dub is going to take a next step. I think that Chet will too. I really have loved what Chet's done in the preseason. We all know the caveats of a preseason, but getting to the rim more, getting to the free throw line more, I think can unlock some things for him offensively, and especially like his counting stats and just his overall production. But those two guys, I think, have to be the answer just because of what they mean. Like for this team to get to their lofty end goals, they need these two guys to cement themselves as a second and third option next to Shai, because for all the talk about the rotation, Andrew, the starters, the depth, the coach, it does not matter in a star-driven league unless you have a bona fide 1, 2, 3. You got the one. You need J-Dub and Chet to become that 2 and 3 in the postseason. Speaking of the postseason, Andrew, I'll give you the choice of a stat, a storyline, a player, a narrative? What will define this Thunder season when it's all said and done?
What will define this Thunder season when it's all said and done? Wow. This is a good question. And when people say that, this is a good question, what they're saying is, I need more time to think about what I'm going to say. I mean, it's going to be all about how far they go in the playoffs. Like, honestly, like we can get these individual accolades. I think there's a good chance that Shai is top 3 for MVP again. If you're top 3, you have a chance to win it. I think he's going to have a chance to win the whole thing this year. But ultimately, like we can even look back at when Kevin won it, ultimately that season was defined by a loss in the playoffs. And so I think that this team, that the thing that will define them is do they actually get to the conference finals? Because I think that is where the bar has been raised for a lot of media, I would say, are making that claim that like they should get to the conference finals. This is the best team in the league, best team on paper in the Western Conference. Like they should get to the Western Conference finals. And I do think that is kind of where they'll be judged. Fair or not, that's probably where it will be. Because I mean, you still have to, and I know that maybe people are annoyed by this, but we still have to acknowledge the age of the team and that they still have what's crazy and why I have said this kind of stuff that feels like hyperbole at times is that like this team has a chance to be really, really special. And part of the reason why I think they can be really special is because of the age of the team, because they have not reached their primes yet. I mean, they essentially have one guy that is a part of like the core that's in his prime, and that's Shai. We're not in J-Dub's prime. We're not in Chet's prime yet. Like we're not there yet. Now, when all 3 of those guys are in their primes, when they're all 24 years of age or older, then I think it gets scary for the rest of the NBA, because I think like those 3 can all be all-star, all-NBA caliber players. And you have a front office and a coaching staff that knows how to put the right kinds of guys around them. And they're going to have more picks, and they're going to have more tries in free agency and via trade. And they're going to be able to shape this roster like they want to by the time these guys are in their prime. Like this could be really scary. But for this season, I do think that there's still the expectation to reach the conference finals. And I think if they at least get there, I think that you can call this season a success. And I think people will, if they don't get past the second round again, I think there will be people asking different kinds of questions about this team. And so I do think like that will be ultimately the defining thing about this Thunder season when we look back at it.
Yeah, I think that ultimately this team, like, yes, they can go in a championship. They can go to the Western Conference Finals. But if they don't, it's not as dramatic as it is for most teams in this position. Like most teams who are picked to be the best team in the West, who are bona fide title contenders, if you come up short of that, there's a lot of scathing articles. There's a lot of retrospectives on your roster and how it's constructed. But if this team doesn't do it, it would be because, in my opinion, it would be because their second-year guys who are in their second ever playoff run weren't up to task to get them over the hump. And that's like perfectly fine. That's like a non-story, because you look around the NBA, who you consider bona fide winners and bona fide studs and superstars. How many of them got to the conference finals or better in their second ever try in the postseason? It's a very, very, very short list. So for the Thunder to do that, they'd have to continue their string of a 3-year, 4-year anomaly. They can do it because they've been anomalies many a times before, but it's such a unique position to be in where both those things are true, where you're way too young, but you're also way too good.
Yeah. I mean, you just look at the Nuggets as an example of all of this, where just like these narratives just kind of take on a life of their own. They go to the playoffs for the first time in the 18-19 season. They lost in the conference semis. Then the next year they go to the conference finals. They lose in the conference semis and then in the first round. And there's circumstances that surround all of that make it make sense. But still, going into that season, into the 22-23 season, there wasn't a lot of people saying like, oh my gosh, the Nuggets are just going to be this juggernaut. Watch out for the Nuggets. It was like, oh, the Nuggets, I don't know if they're ever going to do it. And do they really have it in them? Is the Joker too soft? Is this, yada, yada. And then they win the whole thing. And then the conversation shifts to, well, is this a dynasty? Well, what's going to happen here? What a great team. They lost Bruce Brown, no problem. And then they lose in the Western Conference semis again. this next year, well, down on the Nuggets. It's terrible.
Down on them. Jamal Murray sucks.
I mean, it's just like this constant churn. Like we know how this goes, and we're part of it in a lot of ways. But like that's how this churn goes. Like there's nothing that you can do. Even winning a title doesn't do it for you anymore. Because you look at Milwaukee. Milwaukee won an NBA title recently. But it's still like, this is a disaster, Milwaukee. And it's like they won the NBA championship not that long ago. The Nuggets won the NBA title not that long ago. And it's like, wow, this is just awful. It's like, wait, what? So I mean, it's one, like the league does have more parity than it's had in a long time. But two, it's all about what have you done for me lately? And even if it's a title, like that's not like that standard doesn't measure up in this day and age, which is just kind of funny to me. But yeah, for the Thunder, it's going to be tough. But I do think like they are a team similar to like the 14-15 Warriors. Like I think like they're on the edge of tipping over and becoming like one of these like iconic teams for the next several years.
Andrew, the Nuggets might not do it for the NBA media, but you still do it for me. And coming up, we're going to get you on your season win total and how far this Thunder team will get. But first, going to tell you right now, by our good friends over at BetterHelp. And this time of year, Andrew, it's easy to wear a mask. Your kids probably diving into the Scream mask with the blood running down for Halloween in a couple of weeks. But that mask is just a front because sometimes things scare you. For me, I'm deathly afraid of spiders. But for some people, you're afraid of something much deeper, much more important than spiders. So you can check out our good friends at BetterHelp, because if you think that starting therapy can give you a boost, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited around your schedule. You fill out this brief questionnaire, you go match and get a licensed therapist. You can switch therapists anytime until you find the right one for you, no additional cost. So go there right now, find your therapist today. It's entirely online, designed for you, and helps you overcome your fears with BetterHelp.com. BetterHelp.com/LockedInNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA.
Go get your mind right.
Get your mind right, Andrew. And you better have your mind sharp up and right, because you are now on the hot seat, Mr. Athletic. Andrew, the Thunder are going to win how many games this year?
Rylan, I haven't actually even said anywhere my prediction yet. Yeah. I haven't said it anywhere yet. And I'm saving it for Down to Dunk. So if you want to hear my prediction, go listen to Down to Dunk. Because honestly, I don't even know yet. I gotta go get some better help before I can figure out what this win total is. So I don't have it yet. Honestly, I don't even have it yet. If I were to say it now, I would just be grabbing it out of thin air. So don't have it yet. What is yours, by the way?
I haven't given mine yet either.
Yeah, okay. See? Okay. All right. I didn't think you had. I was like, I don't think I've heard Rylan's either.
I will say, I'm feeling really warm and fuzzy about plus 60.
Okay. That's great. I mean, that'd be a great outcome for the Oklahoma City Thunder.
I did a thought exercise on Thunder on SI where I went through and did a win-loss for every single game and kind of saw how the schedule laid out, how many back-to-backs are there, where's the schedule losses, what does that all tally up to?
Yeah.
And it was like 58 wins. Okay. And then I saw this team play in the preseason, and I was like, buddy, this is a 60-something win team. So in lieu of an Andrew Schlect prediction, since we've teased this the whole show, I'm going to give you 64 wins for the Thunder.
Wow. Franchise record.
Record.
I would actually tie like a official franchise record because the 95-96 Supersonics had 64 wins. But the Thunder themselves have only ever won 60 is the most. So, I mean, that would be a huge deal. That would be a huge deal to win more than 60.
How likely do you think it is for that to happen?
I think that they've got a really good shot. I mean, they won 57 last year. We can talk about all the health caveats that you want. But this is still a young team, and that's like why you can feel a little bit better counting on the health of this team just because they are young. I think there's like a 64% chance that they win over 60. I think there's a pretty good chance that they do that.
I like it. Now, since we're not going to do your whole kit and caboodle of predictions, let's pivot and say, for you, who matches up best with the Thunder out west?
Like that could beat them?
Yeah, who would you power rank and say, this team would be one that if the Thunder could avoid, I'd feel even better about their chances.
Yeah, in the playoffs. I think that probably starts with the Denver Nuggets still for me, just because the Joker is the best player in the world and really tough to deal with. And so I would probably say Nuggets, and I would also say the Wolves. And the Wolves there's still like a question mark there about like what the Wolves are going to be, but I still think the Wolves are going to be really good. And so I think that it is good for the Thunder that you can look at both the Wolves and the Nuggets and say they've gotten a little bit worse this year. And so I do think that the Thunder making these steps forward is going to be very helpful for them. And so I would say that those are like the top two teams that I'm like, you know what, like you get into a series with those two teams, I would not be surprised if people picked somebody else. I mean, obviously there's also Dallas where there are some demons to exercise with the Dallas Mavericks for sure. I thought the Thunder were going to beat the Mavs last year, and I was wrong about that. I also just hope that we all realize that they scored the exact same amount of points in that series. And also PJ Washington became something that he never was ever in his life. And so I do think that there's a little bit of funny business within that series. And I do think the Thunder got better, and just getting the experience is a good thing for them. So maybe it's foolish again. Maybe I'm a fool again, Rylan. But I do think that the Thunder would beat the Mavericks if they played them in a series this season. But I would have more questions about the Wolves and the Nuggets.
If the Thunder lose to the Mavericks in the playoffs again, me and Andrew will sing "It's Crying Time Again" by Buck Owens on the pod. I'll offer Andrew up into that.
I will have had to heard that song for the first time.
It's a great song.
I don't know if I've heard that song. Maybe I've heard it. I just didn't know what it was.
It's a great song. It's an all-time cult classic. Andrew, who do you think outside of the big four, let's call it, Dallas, Denver, Minnesota, Boston, like throwing in every team. Outside of them, who do you think is like, if I had to tailor make a team to try to stop the Thunder, I think that this team matches up fairly well with OKC. Do you have any surprise teams?
Are the Pelicans a surprise team?
Yeah, I'd throw them on there because like that's a team that no one's really talking about. Could like be a matchup for the Thunder. That's pretty tough.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Herb Jones is a problem for the Thunder, and I know that Shai has had some of his highest scoring games against Herb Jones, but I still think that Herb is like a very special defender. And then and this is like the biggest caveat in many ways, is like Zion Williamson, if he's healthy, he's the kind of player that the Thunder don't necessarily have the best answer for. Like they don't have like a 6'8", 6'9", like big burly defender, on their team. They've got the bigs and Chet and Ihart, who I think would defend him well at the rim just fine. But when it comes to like on ball, like you giving J-Dub that assignment or you giving Dort that assignment, I think those guys will do fine. But we saw Zion in that play-in game, and he was an absolute monster. And so I think that that first round series against the Pelicans would have been quite a bit different had Zion played. And I just think that you can count on improvements from guys like Trey Murphy going into this season. And I think and Zion's talked about it in the preseason, like actually having a point guard in DeJounte Murray is going to help them as well. And he was kind of joking around saying like CJ's not a point guard. That Zion doesn't even want him to try to be a point guard. He just wants him to score the basketball. And so I think that while this roster feels incomplete because of the big man position, they could match up pretty well with the Thunder and with their small ball rotations. And then if you get into a series with them where they just stay small, I think that there's some interesting things there. But it all hinges on Zion, who has never played a fully healthy season. And I just certainly worry about that for them. I mean, last year was the most games he's ever played, and then he still just didn't make it to the playoffs. So it's a theoretical problem, but Zion is a very, very good player that I think presents a lot of problems to almost everybody, including the Thunder.
Andrew, we're going to get out of here with 3 peppered questions to you. Just going to pepper them over to you real quick. Okay. Rapid fire. Number 1, we're all very excited about this Thunder team. Like the hype train has been full force. But we know there's no perfect team. We know that there were some slight flaws with the Celtics last year that no one could capitalize on because they were so good they could overcome it. But they were still there. What are you questioning about this Thunder team that you just need to see, hey, is this really improved, or is this going to be something that hurts them? What are you questioning about this team?
I think like the number one thing is the age thing. Like I just need to see, I think we all need to see, including the team itself, like how is it, like the age of this team going to affect how they play this season? Honestly, don't think it's that big of a deal. I do think like having a bigger wing defender, like I talked about Zion, I think having a bigger wing defender is going to matter at some point. And then does the lack of creation off the bench actually impact them? Especially early on in the season where I think Hartenstein was going to be a guy that would create a lot of that for them, where you just get him in the middle of the floor. You have cutters running all around. And he's just going to find you. I think that is, not having him to start the season I don't think it's really going to affect the win total that I predict for them, but I do think that it is going to impact them functionally on the court just because they don't really have a guy that can set the table coming off the bench. And that may not matter because they just may have J-Dub and Shai stagger for the most part. And then you'll only have just a few minutes here or there without both of them, in which they can just, give Case and Wallace a chance to try it, which I think is probably what will happen. But, when it comes down to it, do they need like one more creator with the ball in his hands where, like, I don't know that they want to turn to AJ Mitchell early on. I don't know if they want to turn to him this season to do any of that. And maybe he shines, in the regular season and you're like, oh my gosh, they actually found somebody to do it. I don't think that's necessarily a problem going forward. I think, that they're going to fill that slot in some ways. Nikola Topic is a guy that could probably fill that slot at some point. But I do think like those are the issues that they'll be facing.
Yeah, so I'm all on board with the table setter thing. I think it's the one thing this offseason that doesn't have a clear answer, but they do have a lot of options because, like you mentioned, AJ Mitchell to varying degrees. Casey Wallace has that point guard background. I think Isaiah Hartenstein in the high post can give you some of that table setting and make things easier for J-Dub in that vein. And of course the staggering of J-Dub, as we already mentioned. So there's a lot of options to try to figure things out. Even Caruso has done it before. It's just that they don't have the exact plan in our minds laid out to handle that opportunity. Now, the last 2 questions, NBA awards that could impact OKC. Who wins the NBA MVP, Andrew?
I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander wins the MVP.
Me too.
I think this team is going to have the most wins in the NBA. I think that Shai has the narrative coming into the season of leading this great young Thunder team. He was second last season. I think that the only thing that can thwart that is if somehow the Mavericks have a better record than the Thunder, and then you give it to Luka. But I don't think that's going to happen. And I do think that Shai is going to win the most valuable player award. And we'll see him holding up that trophy in OKC, which has been held up a couple times. And so it'll be exciting to see it happen for a third time.
I just think too that there's like a growing sense from the voters of like, I probably should have given it to him last year. And that's going to help his case, I think, a little bit. But the other award, who at least the odds say the Thunder have a good chance of winning, most improved player. Will Jada be the breakout player? Will they just give it to Wembanyama? Like, what are they going to do with most improved, do you think?
Oh, the worst award of all the awards. I mean, it's going to go to whoever has the biggest jump in points. It could go to Wemby, in like the Ja Morant type of vibe where Wemby is suddenly averaging 27, 12, and 7 with 3 blocks per game. And it's like, well, you just can't deny the improvement that Victor Wembanyama has made. I don't know why I did that voice where I'm like an old timey,
An old time. You got the press card in your fedora.
I would guess that if he actually makes that leap, that they would probably give it to Wemby. But I think J-Dub is going to have a shot. I think J-Dub will probably be, he and Chet will likely be in like the top 10 of voting for this category. And J-Dub is going to have a chance to win it, certainly. But I think that it's probably going to go to like a second year. I can go to a second year guy like Wemby pretty easily. Or I would even look at a guy like Brandon Miller, who I think is going to have a really big year in Charlotte. But overall, don't care much for that award.
And you shouldn't. You shouldn't, Andrew. Andrew, let them know where they can find all of your great stuff, including Thunder Dream Team, which we're going to be getting ready Sunday in person. After the Hawks game. I can't wait.
That's right. Yeah, go check out. If you just need more Thunder content in your life, please listen to Down to Dunk. You can find us on YouTube as well. Go listen to the Dream Team show. It's patreon.com/OKC Dream Team, and you'll get a lot of Thunder content there. We bring you a post-game show after every game. We have midweek shows. We also have a NBA draft show, which is suddenly important again to the Thunder. So all of that, go to patreon.com/OKC Dream Team, and then go check out new podcasts that dropped today for The Athletic. It's called The Athletic NBA Daily. So the NBA Daily is a show that you can tune into every morning. It's 20 minutes long. It just kind of recaps the games that happened the night before. And it's a very fun show. And then the Slam and Jam show is at the end of the week, every week there. So be sure to check that out and like and subscribe, please.
Like and subscribe to everything Andrew's doing, everything that we're doing here at Locked On. Some more Saturday news could be coming your way as soon as like 3 weeks from now. So check it out after this on the Locked On Thunder podcast. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast from. Until next time, be good. Be good to one another.